Okay, next review is going to be Sun Consolidation, written by Dave Wilmarth. This is the sixth book in the series. It is 547 pages, $4.99. It's available on Kindle Unlimited. Here's the author's description. Allistor has struggled almost non-stop since the apocalypse, battling monsters, aliens, and other humans when necessary. He has risen from a scared gamer geek with nothing, no home or family, not even a decent weapon to become Emperor of Earth and several other worlds. Now, as he attempts to consolidate and stabilize his holdings, he faces the consequences of the very actions that helped him rise to power. Invictus has grown. Millions of new citizens now look for him for support and protection. While he tries to gather together human survivors across Earth, new enemies arise and threaten his empire. His worst fears confront him, and Allistor is not prepared. There we go. Yeah, it's a pretty, I guess, good description of the first couple of chapters. That's the setup. This is an entertaining story. I had a really good time with it. It is really good. I have a really fun time with this entire series. It ends up being the last book in the series, but it really doesn't feel like it. Like, it feels like there's a lot of things the main character can still do in this universe. But it, like, in retrospect, as you're reading to the end of it, and the author's like, oh, this is the end of the jury for now. I might come back to it at some point maybe, but for now, this is it. Looking back, I'm like, oh yeah, I guess. Like, he really is trying to, like, tie up some loose ends, and he even went back to, like, to clear up some quest lands where, like, oh yeah, that, I totally forgot about that monster, that story though that I just had kind of been forgotten about from the first couple of books, and he ties them off. As I was reading, I was like, man, this is an old boss monster. Where has this guy been? But it makes sense, I guess, in retrospect. This is a fine series. It keeps up the action and tension, adding new kinds of two amounts of scale for the conflicts and fighting as the main character is expanding past Earth, and those kind of conflicts where they're all on the ground. There's some nice space battles that I really enjoyed as a change of type of conflict. I'm not really into space fights, I guess, a lot of reading. So it's hard to judge, like, how good this was, but it was entertaining for me. Like, I could picture the elements of, like, the space battles and the turning of the traps set by one force against another. But at the same time, I'm like, okay, I don't know if it's going to, scratch the itch for somebody who's really into that kind of, like, storytelling. But for me, I was like, oh, this is a nice little change of pace from, like, regular, like, stabby, kind of fantasy fights, which exist in a lot of the story for a lot of it. There's also just, like, again, so the slice life element of it, where the main character is with his group, and they're going around different places, and he has a lot more spaces to check on and to develop and to do these little, like, mini adventure, arcs. And it's, the same kind of story where, like, oh, space battles are interchangeable. Main characters that you may or may not like are going to die and not die. But, no character is potentially safe, obviously, except for, like, maybe a core group or something. But even then, there are characters that, like, if you like them, they may not exist. And that's kind of been a thing with the series entirely. Like, oh, characters can die. You're like, I think sometimes the author's just like, who's gonna die this book? And he'll roll a d20, and that's the person that's gonna die, unfortunately. But there you go. Like, there's still, like, kingdom building elements in the story. It's not as it does feel a little more like civilization, like Galaxy or something, where, like, he has these outposts and he has to conquer them and bring them into the fold, and their benefits and detriments or whatever, and deal with, being stabbed in the back by other alien societies or groups and factions. So I like the different change of pace in that expansion as well. But again, it was just like, oh, by the end it was like, oh, I feel like there's a ton more story to, like, tell, especially as you're expanding into the larger universe, to kind of, like, be ended at, oh, 2 or 3 colony worlds, when there's, like, a lot more other factions and a whole universe to kind of explore. It's like, oh, okay, that's maybe the authors just, like, want to take a break, or this is, like, a great place to, like, potentially end the series if it's not, like, selling as well as you're hoping it would at this point at book 6 in the series. Either way, I still had a good time with it. The RPG progression is a little slower because the main character is, still high level, but there is still progression. The other characters still level up, but again, it's a little slower than it is in book 1. or even book 2. Still had a good time. The adventure is ending, unfortunately, at this point. Maybe it'll pick up in the future if the author feels like, he has more adventures to tell for the characters. But for now, this is kind of it. It's not a bad ending in any way, shape, or form. The author does a good job of tying up some old storylines and bringing a sort of like, oh, this is a pretty decently and a happy-ish ending for the main character. Like he's not in a bad place. He has his family. He has his friends. He's conquered all those like big Earth plot lines, and in the future, if the author wants to continue on, he still has the larger universe to kind of explore if he really wants to get in badly. For me, though, had a good time with it. Gets a score of 7.7 out of 10. That's a really good score for me. So well above like middle of the road good. It's perching great. That's Sun Consolidation for a score of 7.7 out of 10.